We love finding the next great guest. But now we want to hear from you. What's resonating? What should we dig into next?
Send us an email at hello@abrachigroup.com. That's hello@abrachigroup.com. Or even better, a voice note. Keep it to 30 seconds. We can't wait to hear what's on your mind and to share it with our listeners.
I started looking at aging in a very negative way as pathology. There's a slow, steady decline, and that scares us. That makes us all think aging is our enemy. What no one knows, though, is that we have an emotional journey that we go through, and it goes up, and it never goes down. And that was a surprise to me.
I think we can all agree that aging has a pretty bad rap. We don't hear much about the glories of getting older, but Dr. Deborah Heiser is here to change all that.
Deborah's a psychologist who spent years studying aging as a pathology of decline, until an awkward cocktail party conversation forced her to see it through a new lens. That's when she shifted her research about aging and what it actually offers.
Today, Deborah tells us about the deeply satisfying stages that are ahead and how an aging population benefits everyone.
In a culture that tells us that as we age, we matter less, Deborah wants everyone to know that as we mature, we matter more than ever before.
You're listening to The Breakout, a show about pushing back against expectations, against fear, and against that little voice telling you to stay small. I'm Dr. Carrie Ulrich.
And I'm Kelly Gunther. For over 25 years, Carrie and I have helped people make bold leaps, or just take that first, small, powerful step. On The Breakout, we show you that anyone can push back.
Because that's how we find our way forward. All right, Deborah, we're so excited you're here. We always love to start with, in one or two sentences, what do you help people break out of?
I help people break out of the patterns that they live in, that they feel keep them closed in. So I try to make sure that they get to break out and be who they want to be.
Oh, I love it. Now, I know specifically you focus on aging, and you've been studying it for such a long time. So tell me about that work. Kelly and I have no idea what you're talking about because we don't age. So we're in Southern California where you age backwards. But for those who are listening who are not like me and Kel, Deborah, help us understand aging and your work.
Sure. So most of us are not Benjamin Button, but for the rest of the world, I started looking at aging in a very negative way as pathology, because that was how it was presented to me, that we have a negative trajectory that's physical. Like, we love our 20s because we're on the upswing. We can eat anything we want and we still have a great figure and we're still curious about life and have all this wonderful stuff happening. And then there's a slow, steady decline, and that scares us. That makes us all think aging is our enemy. What no one knows, though, is that we have an emotional journey that we go through. And this is the important journey, because when we have kids, we don't say, "Oh, I hope you grow up and run fast, sweetie." We say, "I hope you grow up to be happy." But then when we get them out there, we're like, "Okay, now do this, check all these boxes." And emotion isn't on that. So what we have, though, is an emotional trajectory that starts at the same place as our physical trajectory, and it goes up, and it never goes down. And that was a surprise to me. I was studying everything no one wants to have, and I was a total dud at every cocktail party. No one wanted to come near me because I had everything they were scared of that I was going to talk about. And when I was confronted with that, someone said, "What do we have to look forward to?" And I had no idea. And I had to really look at what do we have to look forward to. And honestly, it was such a rich huge amount of research that was out there showing what we have to look forward to, but nobody was talking about it. So that was what made me switch my trajectory to look at all of the things we have to look forward to.
You said it that we focus so much on the physical. I'm in my 50s, so if I think back of how we portrayed aging, you were always hunched over, you were wrinkled. If you watch the Golden Girls, they were all like, what, 55?
Not
And
even, they were in their late 40s in some cases. How crazy
oh my
is
goodness.
that?
And they're all retiring and white hair and, oh, it's going to be over. And the fact that you had that moment when someone asked you the question, what is good about it? And there is research out there. So why do you think that so many are just solely focused on the physical and the degradation that happens when we age? And what's so hard about shifting that lens to, no, actually, from an emotional standpoint, you actually just keep getting better?
As a psychologist, I'll tell you that I honestly think that we always put emotions on the back burner. So we don't ever put achievement or success in our lives with emotion. And I think that that is what we see in media and what we see in other things. Even if we look at how the beauty industry is, it's not associated with emotion. And I think, honestly, we have come an enormous distance. We have more people who've joined politics who we're electing in who are old. And we also see way more CEOs, way more people who are older who are in high-level positions, but we're not acknowledging that when we look at media and other things. They'll say negative things about age, but then if you really look, you'll see that J-Lo has surpassed, the Golden Girls, and other people in their 50s are sex symbols. So I'm seeing things, we're just not talking about it the right way.
Yeah. First of all, I kind of love J-Lo starring in the Golden Girls reboot.
Yeah, isn't that great?
J-Lo and Madonna in the retirement community. That would be a hilarious show, Deborah.
I agree. Put a little Shakira in there too.
That would be great. So talk to us about the shift and all the good stuff to look forward to when you're aging. Yeah, I made the joke that Kelly and I are kind of aging backwards because we're in Southern California. I love getting older. I feel so much smarter than I ever did. Now, I've got, like you said, I can't eat like Pop-Tarts all the time for breakfast, but that's fine. I'd rather be as mature and smarter now than I was when I was 22.
You're so right about that. And I'll walk you through the emotional trajectory. And I'll be honest with you, though, I do want to eat Pop-Tarts.
Yeah.
I really miss pancakes. I miss all of those things. However, I'm okay with it overall. I'm at 57 and I'm not trying to keep up with anybody else. And I'm happy. I always tell my students, you're in your 20s, I'm in my 50s, you can run fast and I'm happier. That's really what we can expect. But
I love that.
If you look at our emotional trajectory developmentally, we really have advanced. If you look at little 2-year-olds, when they're upset, they throw themselves on the floor. We generally don't do that anymore. But if we look at our trajectory when we're in our teens and 20s, the reason we're not happier is because we're figuring out who we are. It's a time emotionally where there's both hope and fear and anxiety because we're trying to figure out who our people are. And as we shed friendships that feel good in the beginning and aren't our people in the end, that doesn't feel so great. So we move from that emotionally, which is like the time when we look the hottest and everything's the greatest, but emotionally we have all that turmoil. Then we move to a point where we start to shed our superficial friends and we're engaged with maybe a partner or a core group of friends where we have quality versus quantity, and we're starting to feel a little bit better and even more confident in ourselves because whatever job we're in, we're starting to see expertise. Most people, when they're young and they're starting out, it feels like a big deal. By the time you hit 40, you can do it in your sleep usually. And you have a core group of people that really feel good to you, and this is meaningful to us. So by the time we hit midlife, we're saying to ourselves, you know what? I now have gotten to the point where I have enough expertise And that's where we have the itch to give back. So we want to mentor, volunteer, get involved in philanthropy. We'll see this midlife itch where people say, I want to become a podcaster, which is a modern mentor. We have people who go out and they mentor others in their workplace or in family life, in their communities, or they volunteer. They do all of these things. And that is where we are able to get that emotional fulfillment that we say to ourselves, I mean something in the world. And that is part of legacy, but it's also part of meaning making within our lives. And that only continues to develop as we continue to age. And that is really what we all feel really good about. So most of us don't say, darn, I wish I could run so fast. We say, wow, look at all the meaning I've made in the world and the impact.
You can just tell that she lives and breathes this. I think she's one of the first that I've heard speak so proactively about aging, instead of talking about Alzheimer's and end of life, which is not exactly the most riveting dinner conversation, to be able to come armed with this.
You change the conversation by just asking a question. And boy, is that example highlighted with Deborah, who's going to the cocktail party telling you, let me explain all the horrible things that will happen to you. And I have the data to support it. Look at all my great research. And she did this stuff. So she's so excited, I'm sure, at the party to tell you. And then for someone to say, well, what's good about it? And have that moment of that question changing her trajectory of her research and now how she's impacting others. It's just such a great question. And I'm glad that that person asked that question. And Deborah then was open to it and said, boy, that is a great question. Let me figure that out. Deborah, what are some of the big things that we overlook about aging?
Some of the big things that we overlook are the things that are closest to us. We overlook oftentimes the impact that we do make. So most of us think, I'll just keep going along, and we see ourselves on a very narrow trajectory, and we've forgotten how important connections are. And we're seeing a worldwide epidemic of that. There's a new thing called social prescribing that's out there, where people are being prescribed connection. And it could be going out and getting involved in your community, starting a podcast, doing things where you feel like you're connected to others. And a lot of people struggle with that. And that's where we see people who are particularly 50s, 60s, 70s, and older who are not as connected. So that's the one thing I'd say people should really take a look at. How connected am I in my community and with people that I care about?
That is such a great question as we get older, because you're right that there can be a tendency, from my perspective, to isolate. And maybe if some of your friends have passed away, or spouse or partner have passed away, then you just get more and more isolated. And that connection is so important.
And it's easy to slip into that. You know, you go to work, you go to the gym, you go to places where even though there are people around you, you are not engaging with them in a meaningful way. So if we can make sure that we're engaging, I mean, I just said to people, join the Rotary Club. Like, who even remembers what that is? Or the Chamber of Commerce, things that were once really popular. I think we'll probably get a resurgence because people are going to try to connect in new ways in their communities where they can make a difference and make meaning.
Yeah, I've seen some more connectivity, like even my son's high school, they're reinstituting the community service. And my parents who are in retirement age, they're reading to first graders and second graders. So again, that giving back, like you said, is so important, and that connection is so important. You talk about generativity in your work.
Yes.
What is that, and how does it apply to aging?
So generativity is a midlife stage that we hit between 40 and any age. It's very flexible, but around 40 is when it generally hits. Definitely by 50, you should be seeing this. And that is where we're built to want to give back. And the three ways we can do that are mentoring, volunteering, and philanthropy. And it's kind of like Ebenezer Scrooge, and how he's a guy who was self-made. He lived in a mansion. He had servants taking care of all of his needs, but he was miserable. And it wasn't until he hit his generative stage where he gave back and felt connected with others that he felt joy. That's exactly how we are. So as soon as a person hits generativity and they're able to give back, they automatically start to feel meaning in their life. It doesn't always resonate immediately with legacy, the feeling of that, but that's really what we're sort of trying to build in that generative stage. It's caring for others without expecting anything in return. It's intrinsically motivated, not extrinsically motivated. If somebody's paying you to do it, it doesn't count. You are not in a generative state.
Yeah. You mentioned the idea of giving back, and you've learned so much about mentorship. And so, how did this inspire your mentor project that you have as a nonprofit?
So after I got taken down a couple of notches at that dinner party when I was so excited to talk about all my work on end of life and Alzheimer's and frailty, and no one was excited to hear it. I turned and looked at the midlife stage of generativity. I said, I want to learn more about that. And the one thing I wanted to focus on was mentorship. I wanted to see what is it that people get when they give a piece of themselves to others. And didn't matter who it was. I talked about 45 people, grandmas and four-star generals and everybody in between. And they all had the same thing to say. They all felt like they made a difference. And so in terms of grandmas, when you're passing down the values and traditions to your children, it doesn't come out of nowhere and it means something to you. On the other hand, we have people who say, I've learned all these skills. I want to give them back. And so when I was talking to all these really high-level people, they were saying, we don't have access to mentees. It's hard for us because we can't go to a park and say, hey, kid, do you want a mentor? That's not going to look good.
Creepy.
And,
yeah,
exactly. And I highly discouraged that. Do not do that.
Yeah.
So Bill Cheswick, who's one of the fathers of the firewall, which is how we're all connected now, he said, I'm getting ready to retire from Bell Labs and I'm going to live on a farm. I'll have no one around. I'm going to feel completely useless and irrelevant. So I said, let's see if we can get you into some schools. And he said, I really want to teach kids about all the things that they're going to become jaded in, with regard to STEM. So I said, let's check it out and see what would happen. But it was great. Wednesday became Ches Day at the school, and he was having a great time. Like, kids were writing him letters and building him giant rockets out of beeswax and stuff like that. It was so much more than we ever expected it to be. So then we decided to incorporate in 2019. And somebody came over and said to me, this is a ridiculous idea. Anyone who's really high level is not going to want to do this. No one wants to give away their time for free.
Wow.
And I said, okay, then it'll just be us. We'll be like a few, weirdos out there donating our time. But then a woman named Jen Snow came on board, and she's a retired lieutenant colonel from the Air Force. And she said, this can be bigger. So we went from 10 people in December to, I'd say March or April, to 60, and then 100 by the end of the year. And it was all people who were coming to us and saying, can I be a mentor? No one wanted money, and they wanted more hours than we could give. And so just this past year, we gave out $3.5 million of mentorship hours in 5 countries. And that was really amazing to see that we started an organization that was built on volunteering, philanthropy, and mentoring. And we were able to mentor like thousands and thousands of kids. So that generativity is real. It was a theory that was brought about by Erik Erikson, a developmental psychologist who was pretty well known, but no one really tested that theory. And we did that with the Mentor Project.
Because I studied psychology as well, I know those stages and I know of Erik Erikson, but the way Deborah said it is just, this is the time frame, this is when it happens. And I was thinking about my friends who are in that age. And I thought, yeah, they really do give back more. They're more focused on it. And then I had a moment of being a little sassy and pissy about it, of like, for those who have passed that milestone, who aren't giving anything back or caring about making an impact, please listen to Deborah. Please look in the mirror. Please do something so as you're not to fuck up the rest of the world for the beautiful generations that are under you. But that was my sassy comment of the day. But
that is a lot to ask of people in power too, Carrie. So that is just putting that out there as well. We talk about that a lot.
But that's what I thought. It was like, oh my God, here's this stage, this developmental milestone, like walking or crawling. And like, you haven't hit it yet. Jerks.
I think the key to all of this, like we say almost, I think, in every podcast episode, is the self-awareness factor too. And the more self-aware you can be and truly honest with yourself about what is giving you joy, what isn't giving you joy. If you aren't in a position where it gives you joy, or you feel like it's not something that is as passionate as when you first started, it doesn't mean that your life is over, or that by saying, I'm going to step away from this, that there isn't something else waiting for you. And it's not fair to deprive someone else who has that level of passion for what it is that you're doing now. It's not fair to not give them the same opportunity that you had. So to be selfless, where we aren't seeing that as much anymore, is an important thing. And to just understand that there is no right or wrong way.
Deborah, we talked about all these wonderful positive things and the emotional maturity that you get with aging and the mentorship. When do you have this moment of, maybe I probably shouldn't be doing this full-time work when I'm 82 or 80? Like, where's kind of a decision point that can help me figure out that maybe I need to slow down a bit?
So we can keep going and going. I work with people who are in their 90s and they're fine. Age is not the indicator, but a person at any age could have a problem. It's an outlier, but there could be a problem. It's really when we have enablers around us who don't allow us to see our path forward, even if maybe we're suffering cognitively in some way. What that is really doing is it's creating a negative legacy for that person. It's also, it doesn't feel good for that person. They know that they're not able to give 100% in many ways. You know, we have worked with people, even in the mentor project, where people will say, I think I'm slowing down a little. And what we've been able to do is to say, okay, let's find what is working for you, enhance that. You're still legacy building. You're still doing stuff that's offering your expertise, but in a way that is positive. But I'll tell you that when we think that a person in their 80s cannot operate because we've seen someone who was propped up in a way, that makes us think of aging negatively again. And that is a problem. We need to make sure that we are not putting that out in the media because it makes aging a negative place for people. And it's not.
Right. I love that you said that, kind of enabling. I also add that self-awareness. So the example you said, this person said, I think I'm slowing down a bit. So how can I have a trusted network around me to either say, yeah, maybe you are, and let's figure it out. Or, hey, you're doing okay. I used to ask that of Kelly when I was going through menopause. I'm like, I feel like I'm missing everything. She's like, no, you're doing okay. I was like, thanks, Kelly.
I love that you also brought up menopause, because we can go through different phases in our life where we need to bounce things off of others. You know, look, I've been through menopause, and it's a different journey for everybody, but you can think you're going crazy. It might not be that you think you're cognitively deficient, but having somebody say, oh, you're going to be all right. The same thing with cognition. You know, we can say to somebody, oh, you feel like you're slowing down. What's on your bucket list, and how can we help you get that done? And that's where we all come together and we help, as opposed to it being a very isolated journey that doesn't lead us to a positive legacy, to being able to feel whole and connected with others.
We'll get back to the interview after this quick break. You know those rules you follow every day? The ones about what you should do, who you should be, and how your life should look?
Yeah, we've lived by those too, until we broke out of them. And here's what we know. Those rules, they're not your truth. They're someone else's expectations.
So let's change the story. Come find us at abrachigroup.com. We'll help you build a life that actually fits you. Deborah, It's so amazing what you're doing in that program and just helping people. So I think when I think of helpers, though, I think of my bestie, ride or die, Kelly, because I feel like Kelly's like, why did it take people till they're like 40 to do this? Because I've been wanting to help people all my life.
It's tremendous what you've been able to accomplish, Deborah. So congratulations on the vision that you had, first of all, and then to see it come to a reality. What would you say excites you the most about what you do? Because we can certainly hear that in your voice as you talk about it.
I think knowing that a theory that has been talked about for so long, we've been able to prove that it works. It means that we should expect to have more fulfilled lives as we get older, and that we should feel better about ourselves. And people will say that the only way that you can quantify success is through money. And this showed that that is not the indicator for success or fulfillment. It's really your connections that you make and the individual impact that you make in changing another person's life. And we can all do that. And so that makes me most excited to know that we can do this in a million different ways. It just opened up a new world for me to think about the potential and possibility. And especially for my kids, I have kids who are 21 and 19. I want them to know that their future should include generativity as soon as they can start to embark on that, because that's going to make them feel really good about themselves.
So what are some of the ways in which you connect people who are looking for maybe those mentor opportunities? Is it something where you help them find the right opportunity for them and make sure that it's a universal fit for both the mentee and the mentor?
Yes. So what we do that's different than everyone else is we're mentor focused. So our mentors come in with their expertise. And so most people think of mentorship as I better go grab a mentor, and it's a nameless, faceless individual. And that is really putting a burden on a mentor. So the way that we have done this is to say, here are our mentors. If you'd like mentorship, it's free, and you can meet with whoever you like. We also know that we don't know what we don't know. That doesn't go away at any age. So we always suggest to people, don't just meet with the person that you think is going to give you what you want right now. Meet with somebody completely different and learn a little bit about them. So one-on-one is the thing that most people say, wow, that's going to be the biggest difference maker. But what we found is a lot of times it's when we do panels and other things, because people will say, I had no idea that existed. So we really do encourage people to go and listen to people talk, because every single time it inspires somebody to say, I want to connect with somebody else, even if it's for a one-off. And so we offer lots of different opportunities for students to see panels and get to have a chance to hear our mentors speak. But if anybody wants to meet at any time, we have a platform that's secure and they can go on and meet one-on-one with their mentors. And I personally mentor. I have a mentee who I'm super proud of. Her name is Dina, and she's from Kenya. And she started as a mentee who doesn't want to go into psychology, but she met with me and she ended up forming her own mentor project group in Kenya with college students there. So she became a leader. And so these are the kinds of relationships that I may not have ever said, gee, that's where I could see myself mentoring. But every mentor and mentee out there has probably found that they've seen a new light in a new area that they didn't expect.
What an incredibly fulfilling feeling I would imagine that you have when you see these things take shape, especially when you see the impact, as you described earlier, for someone like Dina, who maybe didn't ever see this in her trajectory, but now, given this opportunity, she's done something impactful for her own community, which is amazing. Ageism is still a thing. People looking for jobs, especially as there's job losses that are happening. People feel like I got to dust off the resume. I haven't polished this since 20 years ago. It's still a thing, we know. But do you think that is shifting now with this generativity idea and the idea too of mentorship and what that can really allow for someone?
Yes. I love that question because yes, it is still not easy. If I said, hey, I want to go get a corporate job, people aren't going to be like, yay, here she comes. And we do see that mid-level and upper-level corporate jobs are the ones that get cut oftentimes. So that still exists. However, what we are seeing is that people who leave these jobs, they look at it a little bit differently. And this is how I try to talk to people about it also, is that, look, you don't have to go and apply for the same kinds of jobs that you're not going to be their top candidate. Look at it as a pie slice. And people do. They say, you know what, I'll go be a fractional whatever. And I will start doing the things that I didn't have the bandwidth to do before. But we see a lot of people who are midlife and older who are starting companies, starting new endeavors. And the reason they can do that is because their connections, what I called back in the day the little black book, or the Rolodex, has become the contact list. We know how to use those. We know that we could say, hey, I know that you know about this marketplace. Can you share your expertise? That's lateral mentoring. So midlifers and older are in a really good position because we know who the experts are in certain areas, and we are comfortable enough to ask for help and to give help. So the loss of the corporate job that we often see and is talked about, it's like cracking an egg and opening up a whole new life for people when they see that they can maybe make their work life in 3 different areas instead of 1.
I think there's something to be said for being able to leave the world a better place than you found it, but also being able to share wisdom and insights that will help someone maybe shorten the runway to starting their own company and help someone in their own journey of finding out what they really want to do in life. So you can also be the MVP of your own life too, because your acronym for mentorship, volunteering, and philanthropy does ironically spell out MVP. So I do love that as well. So it's a really cool way of looking at your life and realizing it's not just one part, there's something bigger. So last question for you, Deborah. If you're meeting with someone, you have 1 minute with them, they're feeling stuck, they want to break out, what would you tell them?
I would ask them, what is it that you've always wanted to do and you felt like you didn't have the time to do it? And I'd see what they have to say. And when I have asked that, I have found the most amazing answers. So many people have been painters or artists, and they didn't count that. They used their business card as their identity card, and everything outside of that they got joy or pleasure from, they just put it on the back burner. They didn't even give it a thought. And they put that into the forefront, and their life changed. These are the kinds of things that I like to ask because that can be delivered.
Mm-hmm. Well, and it's about being able to have the awareness to really just have that conversation, which I think a lot of people might want to do, but they're not quite sure how to do it. So the fact that you invoke that question is tremendous. Thank you so much, Deborah, for taking the time to share your story with us today.
Thank you for having me. It's been delightful.
Thank you, Deborah.
Thank you.
That was Dr. Deborah Heiser doing something that's long overdue, re-envisioning aging. And this is The Breakout. If you love the show, do us a favor. Follow, rate, review. All the podcast things.
Or better yet, share an episode with someone who needs a nudge. It helps The Breakout grow, and it just might help your friend too. I'm Kelly Gunther.
And I'm Dr. Carrie Ulrich. Thank you so much for listening. See you soon.